We have some time if there are questions or thoughts, or if you just want to share things, whatever you want to do. My job is to repeat it in a microphone or to bring you a microphone if it's a long question, so that it will be recorded for Tom's, for Tao and the rest of Tom's family.
I just want to quickly say thank you to Francis. That was an absolutely lovely discussion, reflection of Tom, and it was a task to cover the scope and complexity of our work, which reflected the scope and complexity of his work. And you did a beautiful job. Thank you.
Carol, can I bring you the microphone?
I can also cover some Thank you very much. My name is Sophia Backhaus. I'm a PhD student of Francis. So I read a lot about his work, and it's the summary. Thank you so much. It just made clear how influential his work was, and just wonderful to see how engaged you're still in his work and trying to further develop his ideas. I have a really small technical question to you, Greg. In regard to your current research, so I thought it's fascinating to see really the over time changes, and I think we often forget about this. My question is, if you had a chance to assess how much time the adolescent really spent at home with their parents, because this might have influenced how much contact there was between the parent and the child or the adolescent.
So that's a really good question. I think we didn't assess how much time in general the adolescents spent at home. On a daily basis, we did ask how much time the parent had spent with a child that given day. And so that would be maybe another direction that we could go as an index across that 3 weeks, as a pond, like kind of a pond water sample of the amount of time that families spend together. It would be really interesting to look at weekends as well, kind of comparing weekday, weekends, and get into some of the rhythm of life. But we didn't do kind of a global assessment of that. Yeah, interesting question.
Well, first of all, I want to echo the sentiment that's already been expressed. Tom Dishon's work is really incredible and very important for people in the field of developmental psychopathology and many other things. But I wanted to ask particularly about the project that you talked about, Maria-Elaine, regarding deviancy training in an academic context. And I was wondering, are you thinking about deviancy training regarding like delinquency, as has been talked about before, or peer attitudes toward academics in general? Because you can imagine that there are students talking about, oh, well, I should have studied for the test, but I stayed up late partying. And then how do their peers respond? Do they laugh and smile, or do they go, oh, gee, well, we had a test tomorrow, why were you doing that, as a form of reinforcement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, several years ago, we had been looking at both actually school engagement and academic achievement, and looking at how both influence the behavior, the behavior or academic adjustment. And yes, like when you see your peers being engaged, it can be quite influential because it's more visible. Because we all know that some students, they just do well and they don't really have to study that much. So somebody else in the peer group who sees that might really not even think that the friend is actually achieving pretty well. But if they're like, okay, let's do homework together after class, then concrete behavior can be more influential.
Hi, and I want to echo everyone here, and thank you so much for gathering this presentations together. And I have a question about academic achievement as a part of, I guess, kind of protective factors for to promote resilience behaviors for the youth. And I remember reading about Robertson's Foundation report before, and then pressure to succeed in developed countries was one of the major vulnerability factor for a lot of adolescents. But is there particular way, or have you considered any contextual environment that could certainly be a vulnerability factor instead of protective factor.
Yeah, well, there also are gender differences, if I can add that to the context. So in one of the studies we have done, we saw that if girls have friends who are like high achieving, higher than them, they will do better in school, but their school engagement will decrease, as if like they feel they're not as good as their friends. And this did not show up in our data with boys. So clearly we could try to investigate that further. But yes, like you're right that academic achievement, like at first we were like, okay, yeah, they're doing well, they're involved in school. But yeah, you have to be careful because of the pressure to perform that could perhaps backfire for some people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or thoughts? Well, what I'll do then is I just want to thank everyone for presenting and Francis for bringing this all together so nicely. I think if Tom were here, he would suggest that you find a glass of wine and have a good conversation with a colleague or a friend. So thank you all for joining us, and it was nice to see you.